Yeah, you know the theme song.
All right,
Sometimes.
Brian, we're live. You talking about that theme song? Theme song playing
Oh,
right now. The tech topical theme song. Is that?
oh, the theme song to Tech Topical, Tech's Best Talking Show.
That's
Is
the
that the
one.
one? Is
That's the
that the one
one.
playing
That's
right
the
now?
one.
That's what we are here. That's what we're here to
Oh,
do.
okay. Well, let's start the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tech Topical, Tech's Best Talking Show. I am your host, Brian Ross, and today we're going to do something a little bit different, I think. Normally we have 3 stories. Today we're going to do one, and then we're going to keep it, we're just going to blast it open-ended. It's going to be a good time. You'll see what we're talking about. And we are, of course, live on Twitch. I'm going to pull you up right now, Twitch. So put something in there so I can see you as soon as I get it up. But we're live on Twitch, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on everything you can be live on as far as I'm concerned. So anyway,
Live on
let's go
Earth.
ahead and start our show. But before we get into our topics, I'd like to introduce our guests. Our first guest, when the J. Crew sales started going down, they decided to rebrand. Back-end web concentration student at Make School, it's Jay Connor Riddell.
Hello.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And of course, it is the person who's behind the scenes. It's like the in the Wizard of Oz, the person who's behind the curtain, but it's a nice person.
Yeah, the man behind the curtain, just always
Welcome,
standing.
Jordan.
Thank you. So nice to have my face on the stream.
Yeah, normally when I talk about like the voice in my head, it's
that's me.
it's Jordan. So now you know.
Yeah. So anyone out there, anytime he says that and the next thing out of his mouth is a horrible idea, just blame me. It's not Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, not crazy. Not crazy. All right. Anyway, let's go for the first few topics. Our first topic is, of course, Bumble IPO. And the dating app Bumble has just IPO'd, making it now worth, what did I put there? $8 billion in market cap. That's quite significant. And then for our next topic, the future of tech. How is tech going to influence society in the future? We will make bold predictions that people will laugh at in the future. Love the future. Anyway, let's go for the Bumble IPO first. What do you think? Shares of Bumble, which operates a dating app under the same name, closed up 63.5% in their initial public offering Thursday on the NASDAQ. On Bumble, founded in 2014 by CEO Whitney Wolfe Herd, women have to initiate the first conversation for heterosexual matches. At 31, Wolfe Herd is the youngest female founder. What a name, Wolfe Herd. I love that. Is the youngest female founder to take a U.S. company public. She also joins the ranks of an extremely small list of women founders who led IPOs, including Stitch Fix's Katrina Lake, who took her company public in 2017, and Julie Wainwright, who took The Real public in 2019. Not sure if I heard of that one, but sounds very exciting. The company's main competitor is Match Group, which owns Hinge, Tinder, and several other dating competitors. I think Farmers Meat they also own, in case you're curious, and has a market cap of 45.5 billion. I think so. Yeah.
I was gonna say the world of dating websites is an interesting one.
It is. It's like
All right.
if you own a majority of them, it's like how do you make them different from each other? This is weird to me.
The definitions and stuff.
we,
I think
we may be getting off topic, but I can say from having looked into it and like seen other shows and stuff talking about it, all of the sort of like really niche dating sites like Farmers for Farmers or Conservatives for Conservatives or Libs for Libs, right? Like anything that's like hyper focused, like find fellow pumpkin farmers in a 10-mile radius. They're all of these are basically built off of, there's like a few companies that just like provide like a dating website as a service, and you buy a domain and you spin it up and you give it a title, and probably controversial, but like in reality what the system in the back end is doing is displaying results for everybody. They're not actually filtering out people who like identified as farmers on your farmer website because they're trying to boost the numbers and make it look like your site has millions of active users, when in reality it's just some mix of, just like anything else, a bunch of fake bot accounts and things like that. So that's kind of my understanding, is anytime you see one of those kind of like websites that doesn't have a big name tech app that's associated with it, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at one of those kind of like quick and dirty off the shelf product that's just like they're gonna pump a bunch of money into marketing to get people to their site, when in reality their site is not actually offering something special. So I think that to bring it back to this actual conversation, right? This is an actual like an innovative approach to a dating website or a dating app that identified an actual problem of the communication style. It wasn't like, oh, people aren't using our app because they're not finding the right person. It was like, people aren't finding the right person because the communication pattern is systemically not designed for the success of the women on the app. And so, yeah, I think this is one of those areas where we need diversity in the field, and we need people making products for the people that they have an experience, a shared experience with, because there's no man ever that was going to build Bumble because they wouldn't have thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, with the whole idea of sort of like they're licensing the back end, and then whatever niche you can think of, you can just build your dating app. Star Wars fans, a dating app for Star Wars fans, of which there's plenty, I'm sure.
Trekkies for Trekkies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just called Dragon Con. We
Yes.
all know, we actually know that Trekkies have no problem finding each other.
Yeah, that's true. They have their own gravity, and they attract each other. Anyway,
They have their own force.
Is it an attractive force?
Jay Con, I want to ask you, are you on any of these dating apps?
I'm not on any of these dating apps.
You don't need...
I'm one of those old traditional people who like to actually meet and greet people in person. Even if it's hard to do so in this day and age right now.
Yeah, see, that's always been my thing. I'm not a big dating app person. I don't think I come across well on a dating app. I think, in text, I'm more of an in-person type of person, or on the phone type of person. And what's interesting about these apps with the Tinder and the Bumble, I haven't been on in a while. I have a girlfriend, thank you very much. But I haven't been on in a while, but they're starting to do the thing with the video chat. And you can have your first date, with a video chat. That's kind of cool. Do you think, I don't know, it seems like the space just keeps innovating and innovating. I don't even know where the next place they could take this to. Are we virtual?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, virtual for sure. I don't know if like innovative is the word. It's one of those like you took a feature that existed somewhere else and you smashed it on. I have this theory that I'm just coming up with right now that I've thought about a little bit before, but I feel like on any kind of app that's designed to create or build social connections, there's kind of this convergence on what becomes a chat roulette feature. Is everyone still familiar with chat roulette?
I heard.
Yeah, it's the idea of like just go on there and randomly get paired up on video with someone. It's a great way to like meet new people. Like chat roulette was like a totally like random, like you might see some inappropriate things, like you roll of the dice kind of situation. But there's also people who used it to like do stand-up comedy for like random people that would show up in their room, right? So it was kind of like an innovative space for like a hot minute until people realized they actually want control over which kind of random people they hang out with. So this feels like that to me, where like people want that like connection and that ability to meet new people beyond maybe their existing social circle, but there's still always that kind of like a little bit of a wall that you want to build because you're like, all right, I'm either on this platform for a specific reason or I don't have time for haters and trolls, right? So there's like, yeah, it feels like we're bringing that same experience, right? Like you choose which bar to go out to, Brian, I assume, to like be in a space to interact with people, and you can choose which bar you go to based on the theme. You're like, sports bar, or fans of NASCAR bar, or well, maybe that's the same bar, I don't know. And yeah, so like this to me feels like an extension of creating that extra choice. It's being like, you want to meet random people, but let's do it in a safer space where we all know what we're here for.
I mean, who knows? Maybe one day we'll have actually weddings online now instead too. But at least for me, I kind of like the idea of when you are going out with someone on a date, you're actually like you choose to cut off the rest of the world just to focus on this one situation. And I feel like the more we try to turn everything into an app, the more we're distracted by other outside forces that we're not really paying attention to who we're talking to. And that kind of cuts into the conversation. That's just me, but that's how I feel about that situation.
So are you actually saying the reverse, Jay Connor, of like you're in person, you're distracted by your phone. Now you're saying you can have an in-person experience or an app experience that is less effective because you're distracted by the real world?
Yes, very much so.
No. You go too far one way and then it ends up coming out the other way. That's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm really too up on the idea of all these dating apps. It works for some people. My dad found his wife on a dating app, and he's much older than I am. You know, he's my dad.
My dad found your wife on a dating app. I'm just kidding. Sorry. We'll delete that from the video. I had to.
No, it's staying there. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting, but I'm happy for this founder, Whitney Wolf Herd, who's got some crazy success here. $8 billion is now the current market cap for this sort of thing, and I don't know. It looks like it can only get more and more valuable. Especially, I do like the idea. I will say this: going to the in-person component. I do like the idea of women making the first move towards me. I like that. I think that'd be exciting. I wish there was an in-person space where that happens too. Like, what if there was like I don't know, maybe not a bar, but like a park? What about you take? I like your idea, Jay Connor. I'm putting it together in my head. It's instead of appifying everything, let's take the coolest stuff from apps and then just make it an in-person experience. What do you think about that? Like a park, and like, all right, if you're going to be in this park, the rules are men don't approach women have to approach men. Or however you want to configure it for the different orientations that exist.
Actually, I like that idea. I can actually take a step further, and like if you're in like for Pokemon Go as an example, you have to walk around to find the Pokemon. You have to physically go to them to capture it. So in this dating app, what you can do is actually see, oh, I like this person. I can't send him a message. I have to walk up to him to talk to him. And at least that's like an idea I have to build off your idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me go to the chat real quick. Thoughts Underground. I'd go on Brian's app. Oh, thank you. I would too. Thoughts Underground. Talking to random people is so valuable, though when we pick and choose, we inevitably end up in our own homogeneous little echo chambers. Homogeneous. Is it homogeneous or homogeneous?
It's
assuming the rest of the world is just like us until they aren't, and then we hate them. Yeah, I think that's a good point, meeting random people. And I think that's a really powerful idea that I just came up with, that this meet random people in a space. But you never know with I don't know, there's always been this have you ever heard this what's it called, like a paradigm where I'm not going to like anyone that likes me, because anyone that likes me, I probably wouldn't like them. Or I wouldn't like anyone that goes on a dating app to find a partner, because, I don't know, I feel like that's weird. But I'm on the dating app. I don't know. It's an interesting thought to have.
It's a thought I've actually seen before, so I kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've seen it for George Costanza from Seinfeld?
Yes.
There was a funny one of these fake Seinfeld scripts that someone made, and the plot of it was George breaks up with a woman because she is on all the dating apps. And they're like, well, how do you know she's on all the dating apps? She's like, because I'm on all the dating apps.
Well, I guess also the thing too about the dating apps, which makes it kind of like weird in a situation, is like when you text someone something and you don't really get to understand how they're saying it. So I think that when I send a message, it sounds a lot different if I say it. Like I send a message and someone sounds, oh, that's so mean and harsh. I'm like, but if I say it, it sounds even nice and not really as harsh as I thought it was. So I guess the other issue is like, how do you interpret what one says on a dating app? Like, do you interpret it as they're being serious? Do you interpret them as them just like going on just to ask questions, or see what kind of saying a little bit?
Oh, 100%. That's why I'm a big use of exclamation points. When I invited you to come on the show, I forgot to put an exclamation point, and I felt like, oh man, that seems like kind of short, and like I was being short with you. Jordan, you're pretty good at communicating with the text and the messages. I don't know. Do you think? Here's an interesting question. Could you build a meaningful relationship purely in a virtual space.
Yes. I mean, I don't think that the definition of a meaningful relationship is universally the same, first of all. Um, so like I always want to acknowledge and be mindful of that, is that like there, to a certain extent, it's a huge privilege to be able to walk outside or to be in a city where you can meet people who are like you or share your interests. And for a lot of people, I would not be surprised. I'm curious. So, all you out there in chat who have a quick Google foo, I'm curious, like, what even are the stats? I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of people in the world, if they have an internet connection of any kind, they probably would tell you that they have one or more super extremely meaningful relationships in their lives that are 100% virtual. They have never met in person. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's different if you're talking about what does it mean to have a romantic engagement. Most people do assume that at some point you'd want that to get physical, but that's also not true of everyone, right? Some people are just looking for a very stimulating mental connection. Or let's talk about the fact that older people are dating, older people are using apps. My grandmother was recently remarried in the last 5 years to a lovely gentleman in his like late 70s, early 80s, because they were both lonely and looking for a companion to spend the rest of their lives with. And I don't want to dedicate any part of the show to talking about my grandma's sex life, so we'll just pretend like it's not going to happen. But I'm very convinced that the majority of their experience and the vast majority of most people's actual relationship experience is how they relate and communicate and support each other, and that like everything else really is a support and add on to that. Like physical touch, physical presence, those are extensions of our ability to show and demonstrate care to each other. And so yes, for many people it can be hard to not have those things, but I 100% believe that you can start and build and grow and have some of your most meaningful relationships by using the technology to connect with people that you were otherwise physically distant from.
Very good point. That's right. Jay Connor, I want to get your reaction to something put in the chat. Thoughts Underground. Big fan of Thoughts Underground, by the way.
Big fan too.
Yeah. We lose a lot of depth of a relationship online. I had friends for years who I met on Tumblr, but they became more your idea of them than their reality. And eventually the ideas become incompatible. We don't fully humanize each other, though, through a screen. Tech may continue to innovate, but our mammalian brains only evolve so quickly to new situations. Jay Connor, what do you think about that?
I can agree with that. I think my huge thing is about being in person. And again, I know we all can't be in person, but I do believe a huge thing about making us human is our ability to feel and see things and touch things. I certainly would never like to replace that ability with the fact that technology will do that for us. But I do believe that a huge portion will always have to be in person and physical. Like, I'm not against the idea that I have close friends in different nations who I talk to on a daily basis on my phone, but ultimately I still would like that desire of actually like shaking their hand, giving them a hug or something. Or
the fist pump thing. That's what we're doing now, I think. Yeah.
Elbows.
Elbows. Get the elbows.
Oh yeah. Wait, Brian, get your elbow up. I can elbow. We can.
Oh, ready? Boop, see, this is boop. Just like doing it in person.
Just nailed it.
We do that work.
But yeah, no, that's a very interesting point.
Well, here, I'll throw this out there to you. VR is not the topic, but if we're saying that part of the experience or importance of a relationship is being in person, what is it about the experience of being in person? Is it the physical touch? What about haptic devices? Once we have those as mainstream, common, everyday devices in VR, you can give someone a hug. You can give someone a high five. Is that what makes the relationship feel real? I think another part of it for me is, it's a scale, right? There's like totally not seeing each other, communicating at all, and like letters, right? You're like writing letters. Like people say, oh, my words are less understandable on a screen. Well, we've been facing that problem since the written word, right? Like, what does it mean to communicate in the absence of the physical body and the person? So I think really what we talk about when we say that online communications or relationships are hard, it really just comes back to that communication, because you're not getting as much information. Like even now, right? COVID, Zoom has changed the world. Video chat in general, if we want to be more, mindful of the fact that video chat has existed beyond this like 1 year slice of time. Because what does it do? It lets you see my face and what I'm communicating,
Okay.
and that's a huge step. I think,
Question.
right, like I can convey so much more. Like, you can all be talking and like I might not say anything, but if I'm nodding, I'm with you. I think that is the primary thing that we're not getting yet, right? You don't get that in a mobile phone text chat. Like, you can't see someone nodding as they're typing to you, right? These are very small cues, and I think this maybe is what Thoughts Underground is getting at in terms of what the mammalian brain is expecting. It's actually expecting way more communication information at once than we currently are able to receive through these very narrow channels of zeros and ones, right? And I think that once we can close those gaps, once we can like make our little tiny straw of data into the fire hose of surrounding immersive information about someone's body posture and their stance and how they're moving their hands and their facial expressions are going to be in VR trivially soon. And I think people will be shocked at how quickly we can instantly go from an in-person experience to a virtual one, because communication is what matters. And I think haptic will be a little bit of a bonus on top of that amplifies the experience. But I think that if we can see people's body postures, facial expressions in a virtual space, we will have closed the gap, maybe 90% of what it means to have a meaningful relationship. And also, I dehumanize people all the time in person. It's called driving in a car on a freeway.
But no, if we do reach that virtual reality, I am more than happy to try it out. That'd be super excited to try it.
Oh, I would try it too. I think that's a great segue into our next topic as well, especially with the haptic. We'll have to go into that. But the future of technology, and this is kind of what I was excited to talk about today. And it goes to a little bit of what we were talking about just now, like 5 seconds ago.
Mhm.
But I want to tell you a story. Are you ready?
Okay.
Ready for the story? Okay. Let me get some water here to prepare.
I'm going to communicate so hard through nonverbal means for the rest of the show. Everybody keep an eye out. Communicating with you. Okay.
So here's the story. I applied for this tech consulting gig with Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young, they're one of the big four accounting firms. They're one of those companies that like only rich people kind of know about them. At least that's how I kind of have always seen them. They run the NBA draft lottery. That's how I found out about them. I did this thing with Ernst & Young. They reached back out to me and they had me do I don't know, like a pre-interview assessment or something of this nature. It was done with this company called HireView. And it was a really interesting thing because when I went on the HireView, they asked these really almost like brain teaser type of questions. Like they would give me 3 numbers, like 1, 6, 2, and then they would disappear. And then it would be like, what were those numbers on the screen right now? It's like, oh, 1, 6, and 2. I'm like, okay, how about this? Like 5, 7, 5, 1. And then there's more numbers. I have to repeat them. And if you do really well, they start giving to you, and then you have to repeat them backwards. And then for the next step, it was like shape manipulation. So which 2 shapes of all these shapes are the same? And then they started rotating, and then there was circles and triangles. It was like an IQ test, but kind of different. And in the Make School community Slack that we have, Joseph Cantanzarite, our data science instructor, actually reached out to the person from HireView to ask some questions. And I didn't know this, but apparently while you're taking that assessment, they're taking in the audio, and in some instances, they're taking video too, so they can see how you're reacting to this. And then at the very end, the artificial intelligence comes up with a profile of who you are, and then they use that apparently to assess if you would be a good fit at the company. And I thought, it's interesting the different tips and tricks these companies are trying to come up with to try and find and screen new candidates in a way that's like, I guess, unbiased. But part of me thought, I don't know if that's going to, I don't know how useful that is. I don't know if that's actually going to give you a good, because how many times are your first impressions of someone wrong? You know, what if you catch someone on a bad day or something? And I wanted to kind of ask you, what do you think about that style of candidate screening and that style where you're trying to get a psychological profile of who the person is? Because I would assume once they have the Neuralink and the Neuralink can go in the head, now I can just upload my Neuralink information and they know all my thoughts. I don't
You don't
know.
have to upload it, Brian. They will just already put into your brain
That's
that
true.
you want to work for them at a price that is very beneficial to them.
Yeah, I'll go in a Bluetooth way too. You don't have to actually connect the cord to it. It's just like just channeled in.
Yeah, telekinetic. It's been real this whole time. Hence the meme. I'm curious. What do you think about that trend for hiring? Do you like this AI based approach where they're doing the video, they're doing the audio?
Okay, I'm on two sides, both sides of the okay, so
You have to
there's
pick.
always going to be
You
that
have to pick
person,
songs.
huh?
Sorry, go ahead. Nothing. You good?
I was gonna say there are, I guess for me, I have two views about it. First view is it's a good thing because again, it goes back to your point of it allows the company to see how a person reacts to a situation, a hard situation. But then it also flips and it becomes, well, is that just how they handle that situation? Like they can handle this one well, but doesn't mean they'll handle the next one well.
That's true.
And when it comes to situations, are they going to handle the situation well, or the person who's with also in a situation? Like two different aspects to that. I don't think it fully explains it. I like the idea of it. Like, let's see what kind of person we're actually going to hire when it comes to like a community status and social world. But I don't think it's I guess I'm leaning towards negative about it. Yeah. I guess I don't feel it's a good idea.
Yeah, maybe I don't like it, but I can't quite express why. Jordan, what do you think about that whole higher view with the AI?
I mean, this is one of those topics where I think it's always interesting when talking about the hot technology of the now or the future. Is that it seems like it always fundamentally comes back to other ethical and moral questions that come before, right? So I think with stories like this, there's usually two sides. There's the like, wow, yay, this feels like an improvement because, right, yeah, humans are biased, like that's fucked. Like let's use something that's like objective, right, in some way. Let's make a number. And then, okay, once we start saying things like that, then we like swerve all the way back over and we're like, how many different systems in, let's even narrow it down to just like American society, use some kind of system to rate citizens that has a significant impact on their future, their earning abilities, their financial freedom. I can name 5 different kinds of numbers and rating systems off the top of my head that have that kind of impact, and all of them have problems. And here, I'll leave it open. I'll leave it open for chat to chime in and see if they can name a few, and then maybe after a minute we can name some. But I think we all know systems where once you create some kind of like rubric or number and you tell yourself that you figured it out and it's objective, that starts getting treated with a kind of like rabid dogma, right? Of like, well, this is what the number means. Look, there's like a rank and you're down here. And I'm like, but you're the one that made that slope. Like there's no, like it's like when you're in a college class and they fail everybody all semester and then they curve the grade and magically some people have A's now when everyone had F's before. And it's like, okay, right, but are you actually differentiating between the talent of the population that you're giving a score to, or are you artificially creating artificial distances between them to make it easier for you to rank them and to feel maybe some way morally absolved of some kind of decision, right? We know there are lots of kinds of pieces of information that correlate with other pieces of information that are known to be, a root cause of bias or systemic inequalities. And so I think we're at a phase now where, like most technologies, we have a lot of power to make a lot of choices and decisions based on this technology that we have, but we can never lose sight of the fact that like we still created it, and all of the human biases that we have will come with us into technology, at least for the present, until we can, just like everything else, right? If you can't not dehumanize people in person, of course you're going to dehumanize them online, right? And so I think it's the same kind of thing where we think that we're making something more objective by creating distance, but
I'm actually
without
glad.
knowing what the code is, right? You have it. It's gonna always be a case by case basis. I can't say one way or the other. I feel like it's a let's evaluate this individual company and their practices. Let's evaluate this individual algorithm and their practices, because just like anything else in the world, it has to be competitive. It has to evolve using evolutionary principles of which one's working best and most accurately. But the environment that these things are used in have to have some kind of impact on the reproductive success of these products. So if these products are not serving the communities that they're being applied to, we need to kill them as products. We need to not let them impact us. We need to refuse to use them. But if there is one that works, then the data should prove it, and then we can support it.
What do you think about that, Jay Connor?
I know there was something that Jordan made point. I'm very glad he did, which is at the end of the day, these bots that's making this decision are still programmed by people, and culture shifts. So where the country is now is not where it was 10 years ago. So are we going to hold to it to a solid standard, or is it going to change over time based as people and culture changes too? Also, it goes back to the idea of ethically, like, are we giving people a social report card of what we view is right and what's wrong? Because again, at the end of the day, people are corruptible. And if people are running the robots, then the corrupted people are going to run corrupted robots. So
It's true.
it's just a matter of question of, it sounds great, philosophical, like, let's just make it easy for people and see how they actually react to stuff. But when you take away the covers and you actually go into the deep end of it, there's a lot more questions that we had than there would be solutions. And I think we need to take a look at that and first figure out as a society before we go into the spectrum of that.
Going to the chat, Goom Cosmics, what's popping, guys? Omar here tuning in with a purple heart. Thank you, Omar. Sorry that you got banned by the bot for 1 second, but I'm glad you're back after your second timeout. Let's see here. What else? The wisest of fools has some answers. IQ, criminal justice, SATs, wealth, credit score is one I would throw in there. Is that the 5 you were thinking of, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I'm thinking of right, basically just think of your life from the age of 0 to 25. You know what's another number we can throw in there? Social security number. That can impact your life.
That's true.
Also super correlated with where you grew up because it's assigned based on zip code, right? Zip code, a number you have zero control over when you are like brought into this world that has one of the most demonstrably important effects on your ability to succeed and achieve in life with the least amount of strife, right? It doesn't limit your ability to reach your maximum, but it sure does limit the resources that some people have available to make that dream become a reality. So yeah, I just think I'm here, right? I'm a huge fan of technology. I believe fundamentally technology is going to improve the world. That's why I want everyone to learn how to code, because I think what I'm always going to argue for is technology is a tool. It's a tool. You know what you can do with hammer? You can make a house. You can also murder people with a hammer. And so let's just acknowledge that the hammer, again, let's not get into guns. Those are made for killing. But hammers are made for building. Hammers are made for building things. And I think that's the difference. Code is made for building things. And yes, there will always be bad actors in the world. But let's make sure there are more amazing, awesome heroes in the world with hammers than there are bad people with hammers. And I think that we're going to have just fine time, right? And then we can tweak what those hammers look like, and which there's actually we could dive very deep into this metaphor really quick. Going back to my Google audience and chat, how many different hammers exist in the world? How many specialty hammers exist in the world? And there's probably half as many programming languages as that. That's what I would say. So I think there's many tools in the world. Some of them are good for some things, some of them are bad for other things, but ultimately it's always going to be, is the population educated and literate about what these tools are doing so that we can be aware of which ones we shouldn't be giving control over our lives.
Going back to the chat, John X Bren says, yo, 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 yo. Thoughts Underground says my social is. But well, you know, that one person did that with the Out Protect Your Social Security number. Then he put it on a truck and drove through New York City. That might be the same number anyway. But that's very interesting to hear what you two are talking about. And that leads me to this other thought that I saw that was very interesting. And I want to tell you another story. And that is this thought of feeding all of this information about ourselves and our humanity to these different AI algorithms. Well, what if they get really good? And what if the AI, what if it's programmed in a way that its core function, its core reason for existing, maybe humans are not a part of its core function, and it finds that, you know, it might be able to accomplish its goals without humans much easier, leading to this idea where the AI sort of rules over everything. I'm sure you've all heard of this. We've seen the movie about it. And then, I don't know, there was this really interesting thought, kind of a way out there theory, and that is a solar flare comes, bang, knocks out the electrical grid, no more AI, and then people start worshiping the sun because they think the sun is what did it. And then society restarts and humanity restarts. And then when you look at these old, you know, back in the day religions like pre-Egyptian and all that, they all worship the sun. I don't know. This thought of a whole lost civilization. I don't know if we can talk about that on this show, but I kind of want to talk about this idea of what's the danger of letting AI have all this information about us? Like, thinking about the future of tech, is that going to lead to a positive outcome in your opinion, or a negative one? And let's assume that we're going to replay this in like 40 to 50 years. And if you're right, then you win a bunch of money. And if you're wrong, then we all laugh at you.
Well, I guess in that whole essence, if you're wrong, you'd be dead. So, because they are go after you.
Subservient to the AI. That's a possibility.
It's
Or
true.
maybe not. Maybe they would find something, but I don't know.
Brian, are you gonna bow down to the AI overlords for survival purposes?
If I can get in early, and they can give me like a sweet spot. If I'm late to the party, then I'll just join the rebellion.
I get premium access, and if you don't get it, just join the revolution.
Yeah. They offer like if you join now for the first time, we give you a suite in overlooking Central.
Yeah. First 100 traders to the human race receive a free VR experience for the rest of their very short lives.
Yeah, it goes out as an ad, but because we have ad blockers, no one will get it. For that reason.
AI is going to be like, no one likes free stuff in this world? What?
So see, this is exactly why they must be ended. But no,
yeah.
On the idea of tech, like I believe technology is a net neutral. Like it's neutral. But how people react with it depends, I guess, also in the culture. Like you can take, like for example, the phone. The phone was a revolutionary technology because now you can actually talk to people who's not next to you. No longer sending letters. I'm pretty sure the post office has nothing to do. But the whole idea of it is that we have now connected with other countries, and that's a great positive. Now, when people go online and start attacking each other, that's a net negative. So it all depends on how people work with technology.
Very interesting. It is like what Jordan's point was. It goes back to the tool analogy, and I don't know. I wonder if what if we get stuff really good here on Earth, but then we start getting multiplanetary, and then we get back to the same problems that we had, back in the Pony Express days, where it doesn't matter how fast your communication is, it's still bound by the speed of light. It can't go faster than that, so it's still going to take like 8 minutes for it to get to Mars. And then further out in the solar system, should we get there, I'm sure we will. It's still going to take a little bit longer. I don't know. When I think about the future of tech, I'm thinking about a future of humanity that is sort of disparate, because the better we get at doing stuff, the more we want to expand and the more that we want to grow. For some reason, that's like hardwired into our brain. So we start growing and expanding, and then we send people to Mars, and then we have different, you'd have to have some sort of some sort of governing body to communicate Earth and Mars, and you'd have to link those two, because what's Mars going to communicate with every single country on Earth and negotiate their own trade deals and stuff like that? And then I don't know, maybe there's a possibility that the AI can just figure all this stuff out for us and just and take all the politics out of the negotiating. Just say, you know what, here's actually the best trade deal. That's what you're going to do. I don't know. That's very interesting. Do you see a future like that, Jordan?
Where an AI can help out. I mean, I think
what AI is like taking a more active role in like not only just a society, but like government and like making rules and things of that nature. And
I think you're talking about how there's sort of like this expansion and growth at sort of like the core of humanity or whatever. I'll go one further. I'll say that that's at the core of evolution, and that you expand or you don't. And that clearly we are the expanding type, but I think every organism really is. But yeah, I think that when you say, are we going to have the same problems by the time we're an actual like spacefaring place? Sorry, Jaconnor, I'm muting you. I think you have some background noise. So, I think that we're going to figure our shit out as a species, and we're going to come together and we're going to go into space together because we've decided that the us versus them, that the framework that we want to use is humanity versus the universe, right? Like, I think there's a lot of people that are looking forward to that kind of a place where like we figured out social stuff. I mean, nobody wants to take bets on how soon that's going to happen, but I think there's, and I kind of share this, is it seems like that might be a blocker to us escaping into space to a more significant measure, just because it seems to require a lot of collaboration and effort. But then we go on the other way, and I know on the past Tech Topical, we were talking about millionaires and billionaires are now paying for their own trips into space. So I think there's two versions. There's two ways we get to space and become a spacefaring species. Option one is we collectively do it, and we agree with which resources we do to accomplish that. And in that version of the world, we're all doing it together, and we go to Mars, and Mars is just another part of humanity, and there is no trade agreement. There is no negotiation, because it's just literally part... And it's an extension of our same system. We've expanded our ant colony. We're not adding a new one. We're bigger now. We have more stuff, but we're all still part of the same team, right? Like, that's one version. Then there's the other version, which is the way the rest of humanity has worked, which is it's competitive, and whoever gets there first is going to claim it and capitalize it. At a certain point, that part may be unavoidable. Maybe when you get to Mars, it's all collective. But once you have Mars and once you have another base, what do you get? You get cultural isolation. And once you have cultural isolation, you start getting new ideas and new people and new leaders. And all it takes is one person with enough resources to be like, I'm going to go that way. Yeah. And I can do it because I have enough resources. And so I'm going to go that way, and I'm going to go start my own version 3.0 of humanity at that time. And who's going to stop them? Because once they get far enough away, you're going to be like, whatever, that's, I'm actually really excited. Like, what is the future of space going to be in like 10 million years from now, when in reality, what we're going to see is humanity recolliding with past cousins of humanity from an earlier time in our spacefaring adventure. That, I think, assuming we don't burn out as a species beforehand, I think either one of those two paths, it has to be one or the other, or it's going to be some kind of vacillation back and forth between them.
I'd be super curious to hear what Twitch chat has to say about all this, because Twitch chat generally knows the answers to all of this. So I'd like to see. Let's go see. Calf128 says, I love Tech Topical. Brian is the best.
Brian, why do you only ever read out the comments that are just how awesome you are? Wait, let me add...
Yeah. It's the truth. Twitch chat knows.
Here, we'll do a test. You gonna read that comment, Brian?
Brain no good. Someone at Make School, their brain is no good. That's a game. Anyway.
Dang it.
To actually get on to this topic real quick, I'm gonna fork this ripple for those who know. to the point of actually trying to get to the future and with technology, I think one thing we also have to keep in mind is what happens to the economy. What happens if the economy crashes before then? Like,
Yes.
does it take the tech industry with them, and we have to start all over again? Because I know a lot of people like to talk about how great the future is going to be with technology, but if the economy collapses and the country collapses and everyone else collapses and we hit another Great Depression, then what's going to look like then? That's
I
just my
know.
question.
I'm super happy that you brought that up because that was going to go to my next point, which is Bitcoin and what happens when the economy collapses again, because it probably will, right? What goes up must go down. And oh, let me just cell phone, LOL. Anyway, what happens then? Because and it's really interesting to see what happened with this last with the pandemic in February and March when the economy was going up and then just straight off a cliff right on down. The thing that was super interesting to me was that everything went down. Bitcoin went down, bonds went down, treasury notes went down, all of these different financial instruments that people use to stay diversified and stay safe from an economic collapse, they all went down. There wasn't any safe haven anymore, including Bitcoin. And how useful is it to have a cryptocurrency where, and tell me if I'm wrong, but to me, it seems like the primary utility around Bitcoin is that there's only a limited number. And if it goes up, you can sell your Bitcoin for US dollars, and then you can buy stuff with your US dollars. Is there, I, I don't know what the utility is of a cryptocurrency where its main purpose and function is for me to turn it back into dollars. Does that make sense?
It does. And at least for me, whenever time someone creates something new and fresh like Bitcoin that's separate from everybody else, what you can clearly see is everyone who's already failing is trying to jump in and try and gain as much as possible in that. So I know my friends on the other side of the aisle like to say how the banks will never fail and they're too big to fail. Well, they failed before and they'll fail again. So if they have more control over, say, Bitcoin, for example, if they buy a majority of it and they collapse, are they going to take Bitcoin with them, or is Bitcoin going to have like a safety net to where they can't collapse either?
Interesting. Very
How
interesting.
how does
The whole
any
Bitcoin
part
concept.
of an interconnected global economy really isolate itself? Because if it's so disconnected that it's not going to be affected by these things, then it's probably also so disconnected, to Brian's point, that it's worthless.
Hmm. Yeah, I've been trying to play with this idea of what is the future of cryptocurrency going to look like, and it seems to me as if the most straightforward path would be a cryptocurrency. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about when I say like decentralized or cryptocurrency, it's like it's hard to explain, but think of it as like money that the computer has mined or money that the computer has made.
We
All
have
right.
a. I'll pull up. I did a past episode with Yusuf where we talked about blockchain. I'll pull it up and drop it in the chat.
Yeah, put that in the
Because I don't
chat.
think
And
you can explain blockchain in like the 1 minute that you're trying to do right
yeah,
now.
I don't think I can either. It's kind of complicated. It's kind of tricky, but it's so tricky. I kind of started confusing myself. But what's interesting to me and what I think is that in the future, when we talk about cryptocurrencies and all that, doesn't it have to be backed by something? Like, is there a possibility where my cryptocurrency can be traded in for something that has real extrinsic value to our current society, like maybe compute power, or maybe it can offer me like a unit of electricity? Because my theory personally has been that power and electrical power, not like raw power, but like power is going to be maybe what backs currency, because with electricity, that's how you're going to power your robots, that's how you're going to power your AI. And that electricity is a limited resource. So if I had a cryptocurrency that I could trade in for some wattage, that might be something. And in that case, then you have a stable cryptocurrency that probably would be rather immune from the effects of a global market going up and down. Or
Does the
maybe
electricity have a commercial dollar value?
yeah, I guess it would.
Like that's what I mean. Like I
Yeah.
think
Hmm.
I don't know, and this is not me as an expert by any means, but this just seems to be what my brain is stuck on: is how do you have anything that serves as a useful exchange of value that is unrelated or unexchangeable with other items of value. I think that might be fundamentally impossible to do in human society because we seem to be pretty great at assigning values to things and calculating its equivalent value in something else. I think we've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's not that the exchange rate itself matters, it's that we can do it. There's nothing that prevents me. Like, if you have a horse and I have a whale, there is no reason we can't figure out how many horses my whale is worth. 100%. Like, we can figure it out because that's how markets work.
I think the other thing too is also to get everyone on board with it, because right now it looks like the big cities are using like online currency, but there's still areas in the United States who's not using it. And I think is another thing too. And plus with other countries too, who's using actual different cashes and currencies, like the euro versus a pound versus an American dollar versus a Chinese yen. There's just so it's a Japanese, believe. But anywho, the point is that we have two different types of economies right now. We have the physical money, cash, and then we have this online new currency, which is Bitcoin. It's like, how are we gonna figure out which one we're gonna use mostly on?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question because it can't, in my mind, I can't see governments giving up their ability to control the monetary supply of a currency. You know, they want some input over printing more money or taxation, you know. And the thing that really gives the US dollar its worth, if you think about it, the main thing backing the US dollar is the fact that the US government will accept it to pay taxes. And now there's a use case that works for all Americans. There's a reason for all Americans to have a US dollar, whereas you have to create that reason for people to hold this cryptocurrency. And there's been some really exciting projects. I just bought a bunch of this Algo. This is not investment advice, but I bought a bunch of this Cosmos and Algorand. It offers me a 6% interest rate. That's a lot higher than money is now. It's a 0.25 now. I don't know. You know what's interesting to me? Money has competition now. How the turntables have turned.
It's not money competition. It's just
It's
another
going down.
currency. It's just another currency. There's nothing fundamentally different about it other than how it is exchanged, right? In terms of the user's experience, it's just another kind of currency.
That's true. For most people and how they think about it, it's another currency.
Right? Like, I don't care if this dollar, like, where this dollar bill was printed. Yeah, whatever. The government made it. I don't care how this Bitcoin was made either. Like, unless you're one of those cool people that's watching how it's made on, like, fucking Discovery or whatever. Like, the average person, like, just like with anything, the end user doesn't care about anything other than the utility of the feature, and the feature is I can exchange this for the thing that I really want. That's what money. That's. I think that's the definition of money.
Yeah.
Well, because we did go from a barter system to cold cash currency. So to your point, Jordan, yeah, money essentially the idea of it is worthless. It's just the monetary value we put to what we can get for it. Is I think now if we can have a successful transfer over to Bitcoin, I'd be all for it. But what concerns me most is what happens if one thing collapses. Does it take everything else with it, or does it keep it separate?
But is that any different from the current situation of if Bitcoin never existed? There's still fundamentally the way that things are tied together. We've seen that happen in the world as well, right? Where one country fails and you'd like to think that you're isolated, but oh shoot, now the production of steel has, changed, and it's just going to ripple through the world. And I actually think that's the number one best thing about the modern world, capitalist and all its problems be damned, but that like there is utility in tying us together. If I go down, you go down, and that's basically how our economic system functions to a certain extent. There are still, of course, at a micro scale, there's like competition within it, but that's kind of like the only governor to our system that the big players in it have to be mindful of is like they can only tinker so much, because if there's certain things that they do that like bring down a too important sector, they will bring everything down and hurt themselves. Like, I don't know, lighting a fire in the corner of your house to keep warm and then burning your house down. Like, nobody wants to do that, but they're more than happy to light a fire in the middle of the house and smoke everyone else out of it.
Wow. I think that's pretty powerful. And we only have a few minutes left, so I want to get your predictions on the record here. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, do you ever see a potential for private companies running their own governments, issuing their own currency? Do we get rid of this idea of I don't know, governments like how we think of them, and instead have these oligopolies with companies that say, you know what, we're done with this whole country business and being taxed on everything. We're setting the rules. Companies are going to be in charge. What do you think?
Personally, I believe that
Cyberpunk.
the whole idea of that, I like it in practice, but then eventually people are people, and they're slowly going to get right back to square one, which is having one control all, which is I'm not opposed to if it's done correctly.
Jordan, what do you think?
I think that, yeah, this is kind of like related to the comment from before about like how is humanity gonna make it to space, right? There's two paths, or the two like most divergent paths is we get everything together and we come together as a species, and then what government means may be very different, and maybe it will be one government because that's all that's needed, and maybe government doesn't mean what it means today in terms of like a governing body that tells you what to do, but maybe it's just like the support system, right? The support system that gives life support to our human civilization, and like that's how we have drinking water on every corner and bathrooms every 10 blocks, and like what are the basic features that we all buy into. And I do believe that in that world, and I'll make the bolder statement that I think you're looking for, Brian, is that I believe that companies already operate like governments, and that they already in many cases have more power than governments, and certain individuals have that as well. And why do I say this, and why is it I think it's 100% impossible for this ever to change, no matter what political structure you put in place. And I will fight you on this until you convince me otherwise, which if you do, congrats, because I'm not going to hold on to a dumb belief. But I think that it's already like that, right? I think on a previous show, somebody kind of like brought up the idea that dollars are votes. And I think in the world that we live in, it's very hard to disagree with the statement that dollars are votes. So people that have dollars have votes, they have powers, but it also works at the step down below from that, which is that people hardly turn out to vote for government, but you know what they do vote for every single day? They vote affirmatively every single day for the companies that they want to exist for the future. And we already have companies that are older than, honestly, a majority of modern countries. These are things that have been around, and everything about a corporation is actually designed to be a long-term organism that I think actually can function much more effectively at nearly every scale than a government. So I think there's a natural reason why it's easy to run a corporation and it's hard to run a government. And so, yeah, I would not be surprised if governments play a larger role in the future, but I won't say that I can predict how it will be different from now, but just that I think the fundamental pattern of like we as consumers, we kind of vote into existence these things to exist, and that as long as they please us and serve our needs, they will continue to exist. And it's actually a much more healthy cycle than with a government, because the government exists whether you agree with it or support it or not because of how it works. But corporations are all opt-in. So I'll throw that back at you. How can a government operate more like a company that meets the needs of the people?
I think you said it the best way possible. Money is people too, and it's time we start acting like it.
Direct quote. That's a direct quote. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that's our time for today. That was a really I think we got to the bottom of what the future looks like.
I think we solved it.
Yeah, we figured it out. Good job.
We created different possibilities, and we're trying to figure out which one is the right path.
Yeah,
and then Jay Connor's gonna dictatorially tell everyone, because we know that as long as one person is in charge but they have a good idea, Jay Connor's down for it.
Well, hey, if we're all a good tribe, then socialism will work eventually.
That's right.
Whatever's going on, I'm in, as long as I can get the early bird deal. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming on. Of course, for Black History Month, we are doing our This Day in History. For today's This Day in History, February 13th, 1923, the Roaring 20s, I believe. the first Black professional basketball team. The Renaissance was organized, and here they are. Beautiful. I don't know what's going on with the knee pads, but they got the Converse, very hip. That's a style I could see coming back. Looking good.
Short shorts, tall socks. It's just the different. You're just shifting where the skin view is.
Short shorts, tall socks. I'm loving it. That sounds good to me. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you again to our guests, Jay, Connor, and Jordan, for coming on. As always, it is a magical time here with you, and I will see you all next week. This time, same place, same area. Tech Topical, Tech's Best Talking Show. See you all next time.